I'm John Wilker, the organizer of 360 IDEP. I hope you enjoy this session recording, but first I wanted to mention one thing. We've served the community since 2009, and over the past few years we've had to take on debt in an effort to keep the conference alive. After several unforeseen challenges, not the least of which is a pandemic of indefinite duration, we've had to make the hard choice to end the conference as we're now facing over $100,000 in debt. As a result of requests from the community of how they can help, we've created a Gofundme campaign. If you're inclined and able, please consider donating to help keep 360 IDEP going. The QR code after this will link you to the campaign. Thank you. Enjoy the recording.
Hello. Yeah, we got this. I actually need one volunteer who has a computer in front of him or her. Would you be okay checking out the Slack channel for this talk? And if there's anything interesting, questions or anything like that, bring them up. Thank you very much. In general, if anyone has any questions as I talk or just wants to say hi, feel free to do it. You ready to get started? Woohoo! So we're going to talk about how to make more money with subscriptions, something hopefully each and every one of you really wants to do. My name is Ariel. We'll get to who I am later. I feel like at least half of you know me already, so that cuts down on the number of slides I need to run through. So you want to make more money with your app or game? Question first, how many of you actually have a subscription app or game currently in the App Store? Raise your hand. Wow, all of you? No, I'm joking, none of you. Cool, so are you looking to churn? How many of you have an app that makes money in the App Store or a game? Okay, we're making some movements. And how many of you want to switch to subscriptions because it's cooler and awesome? Aha, you've come to the right place. So making money on the App Store is an interesting mix. If you've been around for a long enough time, you know that you have a few options. Option number one, don't make money. That's the easiest way to do it. A bunch of apps do it. You just put it on the App Store and greatness. But really, you can charge for it once, which is a paid app, which is the model that used to be prevalent back in the dinosaur age. You can do consumable in-app purchases, which a bunch of people did, and games do it very often. You can run ads. I put a puke emoji, not because ads are disgusting. I'm all okay with ads. It's because it's so difficult to make money with ads, and most people don't realize it. So they're out of the picture. And then you have subscriptions. So the only really competitor to subscriptions these days, the way I see it, are paid apps. But the thing is, paid apps make no money. So 97% of all the apps in the App Store right now are free. Free with in-app purchases, free with subscriptions, free with ads. It doesn't really matter, but they don't have a price to download them. 0 of the top 100 top grossing apps right now, as of very late last night, are paid. I think that says something. And then I also looked at revenue estimates of paid apps versus freemium apps, and they make no money. Almost all the money goes to free apps, with the exception of maybe a few games. And that's pretty much it. And it's going to be very difficult to beat it. So you don't really want to make a paid app, and you don't want to continue with your paid app. Because subscriptions are where money is. And subscriptions are actually kind of easy to get into. So if you've done subscriptions, I may have seen like a half a hand raised before. So for the half a hand knows that they're really easy to get into. You set a price, you bring up a paywall, easy-ish because you have to do some coding. But at the end of the day, you can make money. But the thing is, it's very intricate. Making money for real requires knowing what's going on. There's a bunch of stuff happening. You have paywalls and acronyms and activations and whatever ARPU means. We'll get to it later. And all these things that may not make any sense. And you as a developer, you just go, I don't really care. Like, money comes in. Why would I want to worry about this? But that's why we're here today, because this is not very complicated. Not at all. And all of these are really just jargon stuff that I picked up. And most of them are irrelevant. So you might be asking yourself, if you don't know me, how would I know? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ariel. I'm known as Ariel from App Figures Online. If you've seen any of my live streams or read any of the content that I publish, including today's keyword teardown, where I talk about the App Store optimization of Dropbox and why John Gruber was wrong when he called them out on doing App Store optimization. I've been around in the industry for 13 plus years running App Figures, an App Store analytics and intelligence company. So I see a ton of data. And I've been to this conference since 2011. I did this at some point. For those of you who remember it, that was my fault. Clap. No, I'm joking. It's okay. If you can't read what's in this mess, this is a urinal cake that says, iTunes Connect pissing you off. App figures can relieve you. This was a slogan back in like 2011. And it worked very well because iTunes Connect sucked. And now it's called App Store Connect for a reason. But let's go on to business. So one important note is, even though the title of this talk was how to make more money with subscriptions, I don't really have magic tricks that will just, boom, make you richer in any way. But I have a bunch of different ways of thinking about subscriptions that once you put them in the context of your own app or game, you can actually make more money with subscriptions. That's kind of the whole idea. We're already leaving. People are leaving. What is happening? So we'll talk about it. Also, this is not a coding session. That's happening over there because subscriptions is really, it's all about marketing. And if you know your marketing basics, subscriptions fit almost perfectly in. So the 5 pieces of marketing, very briefly in case you haven't seen them in a while: product, price, promotion, place, and people. This is the kind of stuff that you learn in business school on like day 3. So we're going to take those and we are going to modify them a tiny bit to fit subscriptions, which are really just like everything else a marketable product. So the basics of subscriptions, we'll start small. And again, as I say this, if you have any questions, raise your hand and ask. The basics are, what are you selling? What's your product? And I'm not saying what is your product, what is your app. I'm saying what is your subscription selling? And then how much are you selling it for? You can have a whole bunch of subscriptions. Each one individually is completely separate. And then how are you selling it? And I put selling in quotes because it's not how you sell it, meaning you have them tap a little button that unlocks a whole bunch of features. But it's like the how you do it. And we'll get to talk about that in like 3 slides. And then how do you know that it's working? How do you know that you're making the most out of these subscriptions, whether it's 1 or a million? And most importantly, how do you optimize the process? Because you're going to get it wrong the first time, and probably the second time, and possibly the third time. And if you do it enough times, you're going to get it wrong at least half the time. And that's absolutely perfect. You get it wrong half the time, you're doing something amazingly right. So we'll start with, what are you selling? And this is really important because it sets the foundation for pretty much everything. Your entire app is banking on this one subscription being purchased. So you can make money, so you can pay the bills, so you can be happy, so you can go watch all 9 movies of Fast and Furious. And it wasn't number 5, it was number 1 that was the best, hands down. If you disagree, we can talk about it afterwards. But the problem is your product is not really just a bunch of features. Your subscription is not a bunch of features that are being locked because you, as a developer, want some people to pay you money so they can unlock them. That's not it. Think about it as benefits versus features. No one is buying your features because you made them. They're buying your benefits, the benefits to them. So if I have a calendar app and I want to unlock some of the functionality that it does, I don't want it because I care about the features. I don't care about the code. Code is ephemeral. No one cares about it. I care about the benefit that it will give me, the more time that I can spend doing other things as opposed to managing my calendar, because there's some automation that I can pay $3.99 for. Benefits versus features. And we'll get to why this is important in like 3 things. Now, the question is, what do you lock? How do you know what people are going to pay for? And the way I think about it is very straightforward. What do people want versus what do people need? People say what they want. They're very vocal about what they want. If you read your app reviews, you'll know easily what they want. But they're not going to pay for what they want because they just want it. They're going to pay for what they need. So you need to figure out what they really need. And that's one of those things where you really have to know your audience. So reading your reviews is a great way to know what they need, because they'll complain when your app doesn't have what they need. Usually they won't complain about what they want because that's a little bit more loose. The thing is, another way to look at it is look at your competitors, read their reviews, and do the same analysis so you can figure out what their users need. And what they need, they will pay for. And when that happens, you're happy. Happier than your competitors if you do this and they don't, obviously. So a win and a win, it's a double win. Learn from the competition, look at their subscriptions, look at what they do. But here's a little trick. Don't copy them blindly. I see apps copying their competitors blindly, whether it's App Store optimization, they copy the keywords, or subscriptions where they give the exact same business model. And it doesn't mean that it's right just because a competitor did it. One of the ways to know is look at your competitors' downloads, look at your competitors' revenue, and then look at the ratio of the 2 of them. And it's a fairly loose proxy because of subscriptions, but you can easily tell if those subscriptions are actually converting. And that's exactly what you want to know. So it's possible that your competitor has an in-app purchase, a subscription, they're just too expensive. Maybe they did everything right. They know their audience. They know what they want. They know what they need. They read all of your reviews. They packaged everything right, but they priced it incorrectly. So you have to know your audience, and you have to know your competitors. If you don't know how to look at revenue and download estimates, or you think it's way too expensive, talk to me after this. So naturally, we have to ask, how much are you selling it for? How do you set the right price for your subscriptions? Because that can be the difference between make it or break it or make it. Depends how you want to look at it. So I talked about the audience, and the audience is super important for this. What are they using the app for? What do they need out of the app? And it's possible that you're going to come up with 3 subscription tiers. Maybe just 1. It really depends on your app, and it really depends on the audience, and it really depends on the breadth of what it does. But that's what you have to aim for. And you're thinking, I came to this talk to hear how to make more money, as if I'm already making money for the half a hand. And ultimately, that's how you make more money. You can have a poorly packaged set of features and advertise it as a set of features and still make some money with your subscription app. It doesn't mean you're making a lot of money or enough money. So just because you're making some money doesn't mean you're making enough money or you're getting to your capacity or potential. Usually when it comes to apps, people think, all I need is more downloads. More downloads equals more money. And that's true, but that's not all. If you do a better job converting those downloads to money, that's how you make more money. So win again. And we'll get to talk about that in a bit too. So we talked about what your competitors are charging, and we talked about how important it is not to follow them blindly. But then the question comes up of, do you want to do monthly or yearly or weekly or 6 months or 3 months or a lifetime? Don't do lifetime. And one of the best ways to know that is, again, looking at your audience, looking at how much you're willing to pay, and looking at your competitors. And this, we can go down a huge rabbit hole if you want to talk about whether you should have a yearly subscription or not. But one thing that I think will be very interesting, and why yearly subscriptions are a must at this point, has to do with Apple Pay Later. So when Apple announced Apple Pay Later, their way of turning Apple Pay payments into monthly installments, they said it will also apply to subscriptions, which to me is huge. Now you have a service that will break up any large purchase into multiple monthly payments. So if your users, going back to what we said before, if you know your audience and they want something and they need something, and you know that they need it for more than just a month, you can set up a yearly subscription, discount it a bunch, and then let Apple do the payments. So your users will opt for the yearly one because they know they're going to use it for a year or for more than a few months, and it's going to be cheaper. Whatever it is that you're going to discount them, as well as the payment plan from Apple. We have a question from the Slack.
Yeah, we would know, did you say don't do lifetime?
Yes, I said don't do lifetime. I say that with a grain of salt because there's no clear cut between do it or don't, but the whole idea behind subscriptions is that you make recurring revenue. Lifetime is the opposite of recurring revenue. Lifetime is a paid app. Paid apps are not successful. You see where I'm going with this? So that's the real problem with lifetime. And I know a bunch of developers really like the idea of having like a $200 lifetime subscription because it's a bunch of money in their pockets. But that's a mistake because that money is going to go away. And companies that do lifetime subscriptions without having a real reason to do them, in my opinion, are just desperate for cash, and that's bad. So if you're thinking about doing that, don't, or at least think about it hard and long, and make sure you understand all the economics that go into this, and make sure that this makes sense, because this will cost you grief in however long it takes you to waste all that, to burn the $200 times however many people actually end up buying it, because they will expect for you to continue updating the app and continue doing everything that the $3 a month or $10 a month or whatever it is people will expect from you rightfully. So I don't see any reason to do it. The other thing is anchor pricing. So if you have one price for your subscription, that's great. But one price is really a yes or no question when someone intends to upgrade. And we'll talk about paywalls and how people upgrade in just a second. But if you think about it, when you see 2 options, you pick between the 2 options before you pick the no, I don't want any of this. When you see one option, it's a yes or no. You don't want a yes or no. You want them to pick between 2 options. We'll get to that in a moment. So this is probably where I have the most interesting bits to add to this. And we have some time, so I'll take it easy. So I want to talk about paywalls. How many people here have ever optimized a paywall? Okay, I see a few hands. How many people here care about paywalls? Same 2 hands? Okay, we're getting somewhere. This is better than the half a hand from before. So a paywall is a way to ask your users for money. And asking users for money is friction. And everyone hates friction, but you have to do it. So one of the most common mistakes when it comes to subscription apps is you want to push the friction to later when they know the app and maybe they love it and maybe it's solved a massive problem for them. And that's just bad. It's bad because, yes, it is friction, but you have to ask because you have to make money. So I have a few ideas, a few suggestions for what to do in the next slides. But before we even get to those, you really have to think about a paywall. It's not the same as when you try and go and buy something and it's your checkout page. A checkout page doesn't do any selling. It doesn't do any marketing because whatever product is already in the checkout page already sold you on it. So whether you're buying a physical good or you're buying software online or whatever it is, that thing usually has a page that explains what it is, but not in subscription world on the App Store. In subscription world on the App Store, you have the one page that does both. It lets you buy it and it teaches you what it is. And that's a huge distinction and super important to keep in mind. So your paywall is really a landing page. It's a marketing page. And I said that improving subscription revenue is all about marketing. And that's one of the biggest things that you can do, that you can change right now. You want to have a paywall that sells. You don't want to have a paywall that just gives the ability to unlock an in-app purchase. That's a huge difference. And we go back to want versus need. So when you show your paywall, what do you show in it? What are you selling? Again, if you know your audience and you know what they need, you can show that on the paywall. That paywall will translate into, yes, I want this. I will select whichever price fits me best. And that's where weekly versus monthly versus yearly come in. And that's where anchor pricing comes in. And that's also where the idea of options comes in. Now, the tone matters. How you talk about your features or your benefits, that's super important because people don't buy, again, they don't buy features. They don't buy code. They don't care about code. They don't care how much time you spend. They don't care that it's in Swift UI. They don't care if it's in Objective-C from 2007. 2009, okay, I'll give you that much. But what they do care is that it solves their problem. Problems depends on the app and the subscriptions. So whether it's a kid's game that unlocks more content, that's a problem that a parent has. Or if it's a calendar app that gives you more automation, you want to save yourself time. That's a problem. That's something that an app can solve. So they don't buy features, they buy the benefits. And that's what you do on the page. And the tone, how you say that, is really important. I know that a lot of people think about unlocking features, and I think that's backwards. That's the easy way of looking at it. When I buy a subscription, when I upgrade any sort of account, whether it's my App Figures account to get access to premium competitors so I can see their downloads and revenue estimates, or when I unlock more content in an app, or when I unlock some streaming things in a sports app, I'm not unlocking it. I'm getting something new, something that I didn't have before. So if you think about it, the tone is no longer you're not getting something right now and you can get it. The tone is you're paying me money so you can get more. More is positive. People like positive. Everyone wants to have more. Having less is always problematic. And a lot of paywalls, because they think about it as checkout and because they think about it as features, they kind of forget about that. So that's a big one, the way I see it. Give instead of take. Now, on to more things on paywalls. I did say I was going to talk about this for a while. Another one of those biggest mistakes, the big list of mistakes that has to do with subscriptions is one paywall. So I talked about how it's not a checkout page. And if it was only a checkout page, great. You have the one flow, everyone enters through one side, some exit through the other, you make some money, great. But it's not at all that way. So when you think about it, if people are seeing this page when they need something, maybe I can work that into it. But when people are seeing that throughout their use of the app, they may not need what it is that you can unlock or get if we already change our mindset at the time. So instead, they're using these as marketing pages to learn about what the app can provide you with. And I say apps and games because I think that subscription games are going to be the future. Silly ad-based games are not. Or at least that's my wishful thinking. So when I think about the way paywalls can be, I think about these three options that I call my ideal setup. So you have paywall number one, and you show that really as quickly as possible. Obviously, not immediately after someone signed up or signed in or logged in or whatever it is that your app does, but early enough so they understand that the app has so much more to offer, that if they want, they can get all these really cool things. They don't have to. Go and have fun with the app, enjoy, build momentum, see what you can do with it, make sure that it is for you. But when you're ready, we have all these things. That's paywall number one. I think the conversion rate on it is going to be higher than what most people think. Oh, wow, how am I running out of time so quickly? Okay, I'll talk really fast. That was the I'm running out of time sign. So step number one is kind of introduce your paid features. Step number two is for every feature that a user can get, and again, get, not unlock, even though I said unlocked, and I did say feature, so I made my own mistakes in this on slide. I'll fix it later. But for each one of those features, and even if this is one feature out of a whole set that is being purchased, have an explainer. And the explainer is going to give the user the ability to kind of familiarize themselves with their own, with the tools that they can have. I can have this. All I have to do is just buy it. And I think intent comes into play here. And if, again, you know your users and you know when they take specific actions, and if you have analytics in your apps, you should be able to do that. This is where you see most of the conversion, because this is need. I needed something. I clicked, I tapped, I interacted with something that wasn't available, and then it sold the idea. It gave me the dream. It sold me the dream, and now I want to do it. And it's only $3.99. Wow. Or I can get it for a whole year for $29.99, and I can do 20% off, and I can do payments. You see where I'm going with this? It's super simple. And then the last one is always to have something that people can, when they're ready to upgrade, they can just upgrade from. And I wouldn't use the first one. The reason I wouldn't use the first one, even though they're very similar, is because the second one imagines that a user tapped on, I want to see what I can buy, as opposed to the first one, which is shown by the developer kind of whenever you feel makes the most sense. So this is ideal. And if you do this in a way that's comprehensive enough, I think this is going to be where your moneymaker is. And you can look at apps that invest millions of dollars into optimizing their paywalls, and this is really it. This is what they spend so much time on because this is where the money is. Now, interestingly enough, there is a website that has taken the time and effort to, by hand, collect, I think, 7,000 or some crazy number of paywalls of a bunch of popular apps. I think they went after all the top apps. This is done by a company called Superwall, run by Jake Moore, who some of you might know. He was on my show, bless you. He was on my show, my AF Chat, a few months ago when we talked about subscriptions, and he gave a bunch of ideas, some of which are actually in these slides. So if you need inspiration or you need to see how others do it, or you kind of just want to know what's working out there, go to this website. I should have a link on this. I guess I didn't. I think it's called, I don't know what it's called. I'll find it later, and I'll share it. But it's open and it's free and it's super easy. And I think it's amazingly useful. Question? I don't, because they didn't come from us, which almost made me not include this slide on, but I think this is more powerful, so it is. If you need good data, come to us. So I'm getting close. I think I have a few more minutes, but what do you track to know it's working? Again, we go back to the beginning where I said that it's kind of easy to get started with these things. You throw an in-app purchase, you throw a subscription into App Store Connect, and boom, you're making money. But are you making enough money? Can you be making more money? You need numbers. So if we zoom out a little bit, the funnel of how you make money with an app really follows this. Someone sees your app, someone downloads it. If your app does trials, they start a trial. If they like it, they upgrade. If they like it, they continue to pay you. You want to follow through all of these, but for optimization, it's really these two that we need to think about. Retention is for later. So I have two slides on numbers. One is the health of your app. And to me, this is the most important. And any developer who has a subscription app out there who's not measuring these and tracking these on at least a weekly basis is missing out on a bunch. So your MRR, your monthly recurring revenue, is how much money your subscriptions are making. And the good thing about MRR, which is not how much money I have in my pocket, is it takes the annual and the 6 months and the 3 months and the weeklies and whatever it is, not lifetime, because you shouldn't do lifetime. It takes that and it normalizes it into monthly payments. So how much money am I making a month? And that's the money that you can bank on to make next month and the month after and the month after. And hopefully that only goes up. And if it goes down, you're in trouble. You should do something about it. And then your churn is how many people leave your app. And it completely disregards the number of new people who join your app, because those are two different groups. So your churn is really, if you're thinking about a bucket, it's how big is the hole in your bucket that's leaking water. The smaller it is, the better, because if you're working on user acquisition, whether it's App Store optimization or Apple search ads or really any of the many ways you can do it, the bigger the hole, the more you're wasting effort up at the top of that funnel that we looked at before, where we started looking at page views. So those you should look at really all the time. They should be on your phone. They should be on your computer. They should be the things you look at every morning, because that's where you know that something is wrong if churn grows or MRR goes down. But there's a problem. Apple doesn't tell you this. Why? I don't know. These are industry standards in everything that has to do with subscriptions. You go outside of the App Store, online, this is really the metric. Apple decided it wasn't their job to do it for some reason, but we do it. So if you use App Figures for tracking subscriptions, we'll do all of these for you automatically, and we'll send you them in a daily email, and they're in our app, so you can have them wherever you need them. And if you're not using App Figures, you should use this promo code that I made up about 2 hours ago and get 30% off. Continuing. The second set of numbers, and this is for continuing your business, making more money, is looking at your growth. So I said page views and downloads. They're not really relevant to subscriptions the way I'm talking about them now, but that's where it all starts. So you have to worry about this. If you're not investing into getting more page views or converting those page views into downloads, come to my session on a Wednesday. I don't remember what time, but at some point, where I'll be talking about App Store optimization, and I'm going to analyze apps from the crowd in real time and telling them what they're doing right or wrong so they can fix it. But moving on. So you really have two numbers here. And this is with the assumption that you have trials in your app. If you do have trials, you care about how many new trials are starting, and you care about how many new trials convert into paying subscribers. And how do you do that? New trials is really how well your paywalls are doing. If you trigger the first paywall at the right time, that's a new trial. If you triggered it too late, they might be done with it. They might have moved on to a competitor. They might have done so many other things, because attention spans are tiny and they're shrinking every day because everyone is on TikTok for some reason. And you can hate it on the one hand, like I do, but at the same time, you have to build your app and you have to build your upgrade flow with that in mind. And so new trials is what you want to look at. Trial conversion is, again, the same thing. If you didn't package your features into good benefits, free trials are easy because they're free, but paying is less easy. That's the friction again. As soon as that friction hits, they will leave the trial and not pay you money. And Apple makes it very easy to leave a trial, and now it's becoming even easier. So you really want to make sure that the second half of this, of what you're selling half, is there. And then the bigger question is, how do you optimize the process? Because you're going to get it wrong. I guarantee it. And if you, for some reason you think you didn't, then you got it wrong already and you just don't know about it. I have never done something that on the first go, one of those was actually amazing. I've done many things that were 70% good, 80% good, and that's amazing because usually you'll do something that's 10% good. All of that makes sense if you're thinking about it as iterations. So V1 isn't necessarily what's going to become V2, but it's what's going to teach you about V2. V2 isn't necessarily V3. It could be, but it could also teach you about V3. So the idea behind what you can optimize is kind of big, because you can optimize everything, right? You can change the colors of buttons and you can change the size of fonts. None of that matters at this scale. That is nano optimizations, and we'll have nano results in the grand scheme of things, and you can do that later if you really care about it. But really, it's the big things that will make the big difference. Change your price. I know it's scary. I did not want to change the price of app figures for, I want to say like a good 7 years. And after 7 years, I realized that it's time to give it a try. And if anyone hates me, then I'll go cry in the corner and undo it. And I am happy to say I never had to go cry in the corner or undo it. We switched our pricing 6 or 7 or 8 times. And that's in the last 2 years. And that works because that really helps us fine tune how much we can make. And we keep our pricing affordable, and we price for indies, and we make every effort we can to make our pricing and our platform affordable. But at the same time, we also have to keep the lights on. That's really how this works. And when we started with subscriptions back 13 plus years ago, everyone said we'd fail. Everyone, the investors, the users, the indies, the big companies, everyone. And everyone was wrong. We're here today because subscriptions are a way to make money on the App Store and outside of the App Store, and many apps are switching to it, and many services are already it. So this is one of those things where you just have to do it. The other thing you can do is you can switch around your benefits or your features inside your benefits. And then you can try changing how and when you show the paywall. One thing that is probably going to give you nano optimization, but maybe success, is something I like to do, and that's different tones for paywalls. It's not something you should start with, but it's something I like to do because I think it makes a big difference. And the tone of your app, if you're an indie, is exactly you. If you're a slightly larger company, it's whoever writes the copy ultimately. And if it's a very large company, it's a committee, so it sounds terrible. But ultimately, the tone is what people buy. People buy things because they like what they hear, and they like how they perceive them. And that makes a very large difference. I still have 10 minutes, or am I running out of time completely? I guess so. All right, I'll go through this quickly. I'm almost done. But only experiment if you are tracking, because as soon as you change your price and the MOR goes down, you're really hurting your bottom line. You don't want to do that. So make sure you're tracking growth and tracking health when you do experiments. It's super easy. All you have to do is look at numbers. If one that's supposed to be higher is higher, good. If it's lower, not good. You can get into the nitty-gritty and think about really complicated experiments and statistics. You don't have to worry about any of those things when you do this. So to summarize, what do we talk about? Subscriptions is marketing. Each subscription is a product with a need. Some wants, but no one cares about those. It's really about the needs. Price for your audience, that's always challenging, so experiment. Study competitors. Look at their paywalls, look at their revenue, look at their downloads, look at their reviews, read everything and try to understand what it is that they're missing, because that's where your opportunity lies, whether it's for new features or for existing features just packaged a little bit differently, or for how you write your paywall. Track the health and growth of your app at all times. It's super easy. We talked about 4 numbers, really just 4 numbers. If you can't track 4 numbers, I'm not going to continue. And experiment with everything, because that's how you get more, but only when tracking. Things to do right now in case you're curious, you're like, let's give this a try and see what happens. Check out your MR and churn over the last 12 months. Make sure that they're on the right trend. That's step number 1, super easy. Then figure out your download to trial and trial to upgrade conversion rates. Again, super easy. Then show your paywall earlier. In every AF chat that I've done where I brought in an expert and they said, show your paywall earlier, we had comments on YouTube of people saying, I showed my paywall earlier, now making 25% more. So do that. Use more than one paywall. Use a paywall that's dedicated to a feature. Use a paywall that's dedicated to showing the user what they can be getting. Anchor your pricing, meaning don't just have one price. Have at least 2, monthly and weekly, monthly and yearly, whatever it is that makes sense for your app, or 2 in-app purchases. That's really something you should know. And if you needed this, it's up again. And questions? Yes. A microphone is coming your way because I can barely hear you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. My question is if you've got any data or a gut feeling about trials versus freemium. So what I mean is with the trial, you get everything, and then if you don't convert, you get nothing, because it's just one. You either use the app or you don't. Versus what you were talking about as well with features where you have certain benefits or extra additional benefits, but there is also a free version that you can keep using if you want.
Ooh, that's a good question. So I don't have any concrete data on this slideshow that I can share because it is so dependent on apps and so dependent on the audience. I would say test it because I've heard from developers and I've seen apps where not having a trial actually got them more money. And I've seen the other way around. I think the rule of thumb is you want to have a trial because, again, money is a friction. And you want to push the friction as much as possible within reason. And a trial allows you to do that, especially when they auto upgrade, unless the user actually cancels. So they really have to not want to pay for it in order to keep it. But definitely something I would recommend testing. And again, really depends on the audience and how they use the app and the specific purpose. I've heard a bunch of stories from people who have professional apps that target people who know exactly what they want. They don't need salesy marketing pages. They need to know they have the one feature they care about. Then they'll pay you $60 because they need it to run a stream or do something crazy. But in that case, you don't want to trial. No one cares. But those are few. And so if you know your audience, that's really what it's all about.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Yes. Microphone is coming.
And what app markets does the subscription model work best? So meaning what type of specific apps does that model work well, barring entertainment apps?
I want to say that at this point, end of 2022, in almost every app, there aren't many apps that a subscription would not fit. There are the rule of thumb with that is if your app continues to provide value over time, then it makes sense for a subscription because if you get everything up front, you wouldn't need it again. So as soon as you need it again, that's when a subscription would make the most sense. But ask almost everyone here who either has a subscription app or switch from a paid model to a subscription app, and you'll see that the categories are really all over the map. The one that is, I guess, the biggest question mark is games. And games, I believe, will be shifting more towards subscription in the next few years because it makes a lot more sense than really anything else. Any more questions? I'm officially out of time, but any more questions, quick? No. Awesome. We did it. Go make more money with subscriptions.